This story may read better once it's available in its entirety, but Superman Year 1 Book 1 falls far short of creating an exciting new origin for the world's most iconic superhero. DC Black Label finally moves away from the most popular character in comics today, Batman, to focus on its most iconic. Batman Damn features stunning art and lackluster story, in my opinion. Batman Last Night on Earth is an achievement in both art and storycraft. Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. finally delivers Superman to the Black Label fold, to very uneven results. The one consistent letdown, the entire book, is a near schizophrenic narration. Sometimes it appears a third party is recounting the tale. At others, it's from Clark directly. It's also difficult to keep up with which father is influencing Clark's understanding of humanity and his place in it. It honestly feels like a rough draft that DC editorial greenlit because they had better things to do than help craft the best story possible. The book is in desperate need of a quality editor to focus the narrative. It all leads to a very unsatisfying origin that leaves much to be desired. I think it's time to acknowledge Frank Miller just isn't a writer that will ever suit Superman and his very virtuous character. Miller has had several attempts to create his own definitive Superman story with mostly divisive results. It doesn't help that Mark Millar already created an alternate origin with very dark implications. It's a very tall order to outdo Red Sun in terms of originality or quality for an Elseworlds take on the character. Superman Year 1 isn't a disaster by any means, but falls woefully short of quality storytelling. It does little but disappoint me as a fan of both Frank Miller and Superman. The book inexplicably recounts the destruction of Krypton without adding much of anything to the story. After a while, it gets very tiresome having the same story retold over and over. Kal-El's escape from a dying Krypton is one of the best known modern origin stories in the world. John Romita Jr.'s art is really good on this book, but the look on Jor-El's face in the beginning resembles mania much more than fear in my opinion. In general, the art is a bit off at the beginning of the story, but gets much better when Clark enters high school. The inks from Danny Mikey are particularly good and elevate Romita's art. When Jonathan Kent discovers Kal-El wrapped in a shroud from Krypton, he looks rather creepy to me. It's almost hard to imagine Pa Kent having the stones to approach this baby to begin with. This is also where the origin starts to come off the rails. The Kryptonian baby probes his mind and decides Jonathan Kent is fit to raise him. The baby uses telepathic influence to make Kent decide to take him home. Adopting Clark is not an act of love by the Kents in this new origin. This fundamentally changes the role the Kents play in his upbringing and ultimately his moral code. When Clark is depicted as a toddler, his look remains very strange. His head appears to be twice as large in comparison to his body as it should. He also has a very distant, non-emotional look in his face. Clark setting fire to the kitchen using his eyes because he can't speak is actually really clever storytelling. His adoptive parents are fully aware Clark is filled with powers they can't understand. It's demonstrated very well in multiple instances. The depiction of his adolescence is easily the strongest storytelling of Superman Year 1, Book 1. The art stabilizes as Clark gets ready to enter high school, and the story falls apart for me. This Clark is far from humble. As he enters town, he believes people are celebrating his arrival for his first day of school. He doesn't appear to have many of the morals passed on to him from his adoptive parents readers are used to. But it's never explained why. What changed, other than the baby telepathically influencing Jonathan Kent, that he wasn't prepared for high school this go-around? This new Clark Kent is void of most of his small-town charm and likability. He's not evil or anything, but something more significant about his upbringing needed to change for the character to change this much from the original stories. Clark falls in with a crew of outsiders called the Weirdos at school. He quickly develops a reputation for standing up to bullies, mostly physically, although he tries to tell his new friends how to fend them off with wit here. Funny enough, he never actually does this himself. His friends also seem to learn about his invulnerability very quickly. Clark is not especially adept at hiding his powers from the start. The local gang of bullies are led by a racist named Markham. Clark asks his friends if they've had any more issues from him. Not since Clark used his powers to tape him up naked in the girls' locker room. Superman taping up boys naked in school is honestly pretty disgusting. Not the way a virtuous hero uses his abilities. Not the way his parents taught him to use his powers at all. This all feels like what the writer would do if he had powers in high school. But I don't want to read about the actions Frank Miller would have taken. I want to read about Clark Kent, Superman, and this just isn't it. And it gets a lot worse, to be honest. The actions of the bullies continue to escalate, and Clark asks his adoptive parents for help. The characterization of Clark is really off this entire issue, but so are Ma and Pa Kent. They speak like bumpkins for the most part. I understand city folk probably think less of people from the country, but it's really off-putting just how dumb Frank makes the Kent sound. He also makes Martha Kent extremely milquetoast and void of any life or personality for the most part. Jonathan Kent isn't treated much better. Pa Kent knows Clark has power and could kill his classmates easily, but still advises him to flatten him if talking doesn't work. At this point in the story, the worst the bullies have done is egg his friends. Not exactly life and death stuff, but his parents never help him understand he must be careful with his powers. During a later encounter with the bullies, we learn that Jor-El provides him with these lessons. Jor-El describes humans as dull and horribly slow, weak and terribly fragile. Their bones snap like twigs. Everything the bones try to protect is jelly. He told him to never lose your temper. They break too easily. Clark, learning about the physical differences between him and humans from his Kryptonian father rather than his human father, is backwards. He sees humans as weak bags of jelly and pities them rather than seeing himself as exceptionally powerful. I honestly don't know what Miller is going for, but it doesn't work for the character, in my opinion. This isn't Superman's origin. Clark is convinced everyone from the faculty, the parents, to the students are all scared to death of Markham and his bullies. Clark and Lana Lang plan to meet up and deliver photo evidence to the police and put a stop to it. The bullies get wind of it and trick her into going outside. They take the photos and decide to gang rape her to teach Lana a lesson. This is way too far for a Superman comic, in my opinion. Plus, the bullies have gone from egging and roughing up his friends to rape in very short order. Thankfully, Clark intervenes, but this feels so out of place and just here for shock factor. I definitely wish I'd stopped reading the story earlier when I could tell it wasn't for me. Clark uses the situation to flirt with Lana and fly away with her in plain sight. At this point, he just uses all his powers in view of anyone, and there isn't a single repercussion. People literally sit on their porches and watch Clark as he flies in the sky. He speed reads in school to impress his girlfriend. Nothing happens, just normal behavior. He drags an entire football team with him for the winning score, and everyone's ecstatic, never questioning how this is humanly possible. I'm not sure what planet this is, but it doesn't feel like Earth at all. The government would have found out about this behavior, and he would have been hunted down, studied, and exposed as an alien life form. He's no longer living as a human. While throwing some hay bales, Clark tells Pa Kent that he's joining the Navy. I can't imagine anything more out of left field. They tell his ma, and she's heartbroken. Both his parents know he's indestructible. Why are they worried he's going to get hurt? Anyway, to end the book, he boards the bus for boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. The next images aren't in this book. They're from the next issue. Superman Clark Kent is going to become a Navy SEAL. I can see some people thinking this is exciting, but to me, this is absolutely stupid. Clark Kent could pass SEAL training without trying. This isn't a test of his physical capability or mental resiliency at all. I personally find this a complete waste of time and won't be venturing any further with Frank Miller to discover his tainted Superman. If you're excited about this, I'm happy for you, but we'll have to agree to disagree. This story may read better once it's available in its entirety, but Superman Year 1 Book 1 falls far short of creating an exciting new origin for the world's most iconic superhero. The narration feels jumbled and unfinished. The art is good and gets better as the story moves Clark out of adolescence, but it doesn't feel like anything truly special. DC Black Label is supposed to be premium stories from the best creators. Miller and Romita Jr.'s reputations seem to fit Black Label, but Superman Year One never feels like a premium comic experience. I rate it 2.5 out of 5 overall. I understand there are many Frank Miller fans that will give him a pass, and this might be a divisive review, but this is substandard writing, in my opinion. For those who are happy to read a new Frank Miller book, I'm glad you enjoy this. For those who feel like Black Label just had their first swing and miss, I feel you. Very little of this book works for me either. Finally, I would like to invite you all to tune into the Comics Aficionados right here on Thinking Critical YouTube this Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Special guest Dylan from the Real Comic Book Gamer YouTube channel will join my panel of experts. We'll be discussing Frank Miller's Superman Year One, as well as debate the best and worst Superman writers, stories, eras, and more. Hope to see you all there. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.